when conservative legal commentator Andrew McCarthy calls your actions a war crime. Yeah, this scandal involving Pete Hegseth and Trump is getting serious. Let's discuss. I'm Dave Aronberg, former state attorney for Palm Beach County, aka the Florida Law Man here on the MeidasTouch Network. It's good to be back on the mothership. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. Hit the like button if you like this video, and let's talk about the growing scandal that has legs. We're talking about Pete Hegseth and his order to his admirals to double tap this Venezuelan boat that was allegedly carrying narcotics traffickers. And by double tap, it means double strike, making sure that everyone's dead on the boat. Hegseth bragged about it afterwards. He was unapologetic. After all, Trumpism means you never have to say you're sorry. But now he's walking it back a little bit, saying it's legal, right? And Trump, for his part, said that he didn't really know much about this thing. I mean, never heard of Hegseth. He's like the coffee boy, right? I'm kidding about that last part, but yeah, we're seeing that there's calls for congressional hearings. We're seeing Republicans speak up. And now we're seeing Andrew McCarthy, who is a legal commentator on Fox News, writes for National Review, a conservative who Trump reads and someone that Republicans read. Because although he will sometimes call out Trump for stuff, generally he's been overall supportive. He's been very critical of the so-called weaponization of the Department of Justice under the previous administration. Of course, that Merrick Garland, who is the opposite of weaponizing the DOJ, but that's another video for another day. But McCarthy now has some really strong words about this growing scandal. And before I get to the actual words he said, I want to also point out that one of the reasons why that congressional leaders and other Republicans are turning on Hegseth is because Hegseth is not one of them. He didn't come from Congress, doesn't have the loyalty as part of the old boys club that others do. Hegseth came from Fox News. Hegseth even would talk trash about some other Republicans, and now they see blood in the water. Plus, Hegseth has stepped in it before, and they're not laying down their careers for him. For Trump, up to a point, because Trump is entering lame duck status. So keep an eye on that. But right now, the number one goal for Republicans in Congress is self-preservation. They see the midterms coming up, and they're spooked by the Democratic wave that occurred last month. So this is getting real. And now look at what Andrew McCarthy wrote in the National Review. He entitles his column, quote, "We intended the strike to be lethal. Is not a defense." According to McCarthy, if this happened as described in the Washington Post report, it was, at best, a war crime under federal law. I say at best because, as regular readers know, I believe the attacks on these suspected drug boats without congressional authorization, under circumstances in which the boat operators pose no military threat to the United States, and given that narcotics trafficking is defined in federal law as a crime rather than as terrorist activity, much less an act or war, he meant to say much less an act of war, are lawless, and therefore that the killings are not legitimate under the law or armed conflict. To reiterate, I don't accept that the ship operators are enemy combatants, even if one overlooks that the administration has not proven that they are drug traffickers or members of designated FTOs, that stands for Foreign Terrorist Organizations. There is no armed conflict. They may be criminals if it is proven that they are importing illegal narcotics, but they are not combatants. My point, nevertheless, is that even if you buy the untenable claim that they are combatants, it is a war crime to intentionally kill combatants who have been rendered unable to fight. It is not permitted under the laws and customs of honorable warfare to order that no quarter be given, to apply lethal force to those who surrender or who are injured, shipwrecked, or otherwise unable to fight. That's pretty strong words from a prominent conservative legal pundit. Now, keep in mind that there has been no proof provided by the Trump administration that these individuals are who they say they are, which is foreign terrorist organizations, narcotics traffickers. In fact, there were those two survivors on a later boat that was shot at and destroyed, and the two survivors were actually captured, and they were not brought to Gitmo, no, not sent to Guantanamo Bay, not sent to American prisons. They were sent home to their home countries, which tells you that they, at least these individuals, were not criminals or terrorists. If they were, they would be treated as such, but they weren't. Maybe that's one reason why Hegseth didn't want any survivors. Now, this was one of, if not the first boat that was attacked and destroyed. And according to reports, there were individuals who were hanging on to the boat or the life rafts are just in the water, not a threat to our country. And if the rules of war are that if you have someone trying to surrender or are not a threat to us, you can't just kill them. You violate international law. You violate potential domestic law against murder. Now, if you're wondering whether Trump can pardon Hegseth and anyone else, like the admirals, anyone else, the actual service members who dropped the bombs on these individuals and made sure that there were no survivors, yes, he could pardon them. He's commander-in-chief. He can pardon them under Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution. Pardon powers, very broad, as we've seen from a lot of the other pardons Trump has given. Now, but the political costs would be immense. Now, remember, this is something the Republicans are worried about as they approach the midterms. That's why they're calling for hearings. And you start pardoning people now, that is conscious of guilt. Also, it's not really Trump's MO to pardon people this far out. Usually he pardons after the person has gone through the process, after the person has been either put on trial or found guilty, and then he'll pardon them, like he did with Paul Manafort. And now, of course, there are examples of the opposite. He pardoned Steve Bannon after he was charged before he went on trial for ripping off, by the way, fellow MAGA supporters. But as far as international law, no, he cannot pardon anyone. The International Criminal Court of foreign nations could theoretically charge individuals for these war crimes, but the United States is not a party to what's called the Rome Statute. That's what created the ICC. And The Hague, all this stuff, it's a no-go, because as long as the international community can try to bring up charges, but as long as Hegseth and others don't travel abroad, they're not getting arrested. And the United States doesn't recognize the ICC. So if you're waiting for international law to somehow lock up these individuals, that's not going to happen. But they could be charged domestically. And they could put Trump in a very precarious position where Trump could have to pardon them. But if you're wondering what kind of domestic laws could be at play here, you have the War Crimes Act of 1996. It's found in 18 U.S.C. 2441. That criminalizes grave breaches of the Geneva Conventions committed by or against U.S. nationals. Intentionally committing or killing a combatant who has surrendered or is unable to fight is a grave breach here. Okay. You also have the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Article 118 says murder is unlawful, obviously. Article 90/92, failure to obey lawful orders or dereliction of duty, since the U.S. military is trained to follow the law of armed conflict, which says that you can't carry out an illegal order. An order that says kill everyone, like what happened here, would be an illegal order. And servicemen and women have a duty not to follow those illegal orders. So that places the admiral and his subordinates at risk here in legal jeopardy. And if you're wondering whether anyone would really be charged under federal law, under the Department of Justice, which is under Trump, well, maybe not there, but there's also the military. And I know what you're thinking. Trump is commander-in-chief, and he can just say, nope, we're not going to do it. But in the military, charges are not brought by the DOJ. They're brought by what's called a convening authority. And it's usually a high-ranking military commander. It's like a general or an admiral in the chain of command. And yes, I realize Trump is commander-in-chief, but the military justice system is designed to be semi-independent to prevent political meddling. So a convening authority could theoretically bring charges against the admiral for following an illegal order, the double tap, or the actual individuals who fired the shots. And Trump could go ahead and then fire that commander and order them to stand down. It would be just a political mess if he did. And I know you're thinking, well, he survived political messes before, but not necessarily when it involves the military. When you're starting to go after members of the military who are committing war crimes and who are trying to investigate war crimes, that may be a bit too far, especially when Trump is in lame duck status, which every day brings us closer to that. Of course, when the Democrats gain control of the House, they could impeach Hegseth, and the crimes that result in death would have no statute of limitations. So Trump would have to pardon Hegseth and not throw him under the bus. Remember, it is possible Trump decides to make him the scapegoat and throws him under the bus and makes him into like a Papadopoulos coffee boy that he's never heard of. That could happen too. So there are a lot of different options here, but the one that probably is most likely is the political option, where Trump and the Republican Party, as they inch towards the midterms, take a beating over this, because this story is not going away. The one positive for the Trump administration in this is that it looks like they've taken the Epstein files off the front pages for now. Now back to Andrew McCarthy. Andrew McCarthy then says that Hegseth's defense is that, as we've said from the beginning and in every statement, these highly effective strikes are specifically intended to be lethal kinetic strikes. The declared intent is to stop lethal drugs, destroy narco boats, and kill the narco terrorists who are poisoning the American people. So what they're saying is, hey, we're not supposed to take any prisoners or accept surrender. It's supposed to be lethal. So we did exactly as it's intended. But as McCarthy says, neither Hegseth's statement nor the explanation attributed to Bradley, that's the admiral, and excerpt above makes legal sense. The laws of war, as they are incorporated into federal law, make lethal force unlawful if it is used under certain circumstances. Hence, it cannot be a defense to say, as Hegseth does, that one has killed because one's objective was, quote, lethal kinetic strikes. Moreover, if an arguable combatant has been rendered hors de combat, targeting him with lethal force cannot be rationalized, as Bradley is said to have done, by theorizing that it was possible at some future point that the combatant could get help and be able to contribute once again to the enemy operations. So this is a no-win proposition for Hegseth and his team, and I think more and more people, even on the Republican side, will speak out about it. This scandal is only growing. It is not going away. And we'll keep following it here on the MeidasTouch Network. I'm Dave Aronberg, aka the Florida Law Man. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, share with a friend, leave a comment below. Also, check out my Substack at Dave Aronberg. I'll see you there, and I'll see you here again next time.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.